Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers,
Hello and welcome to episode 453 of the AFTN Preview Podcast. I'm Gideon Hill, and alongside me today, riding shotgun, the amazing Peter Hicken. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Gideon. Great to be here today.
So let's quickly delve into the game on Sunday, Peter. I know that the guys on the Sunday show go pretty in depth with their YouTube shows and their podcasts that are just excellent. Might I add, filling in for Joe tonight. He and his wife Caroline had their second child, I believe it was Tuesday or Monday. So congratulations to Joe. I want to say that first off. But let's switch topic to a much more disappointing game in Sunday, as mentioned. Kansas City, a 3-0 loss for the Caps. Peter, what did you or didn't you see out of that game for Vancouver?
Yeah, well, I mean, to give some context, I remember I woke up on that was on Sunday, right? Yeah, I remember I woke up on Sunday and I'd kind of slept in. I remembered, it was like 11 o'clock. I was like, oh, the Caps are playing, so I just still sitting in bed and turned on my computer, and it's about the 30th minute when I tuned in. I remember like right away I turned it on and like Krapos made like a great save. I was like, oh wow, that looked bad, and then proceeds 1 minute later to see Shallowy then go and score, and then 2 minutes later the penalty, and all of this while I'm like still just waking up. I'm like, wow, this is not going well. But I mean,
not good for a Sunday.
And so that's that based on that sample, and obviously I don't know if you could say things got better from there, but they certainly weren't. Or I think anything's better than conceding 2 goals in 5 minutes. So yeah, I mean things went better from there, but at the same time that was almost an accurate characterization of how much the Whitecaps were scrambling for a lot of that game.
You know what? It did feel like a Sunday morning game for the people watching and the players participating in the game. Yeah, that not an ideal game. It wasn't 6-1 or 7-1, whatever the score was in Kansas City about 3 years ago when Teixeira got sent off, and I think there was another player sent off. Reyna, I think it was that.
It was Reyna and Efrain Juarez in 2018.
Yes, that's right.
Robbo's last season.
Yeah, so that jogs memory briefly and then evades it. But let's talk about this weekend, Peter. A new opponent comes new opportunity. The Whitecaps team that is yet to score from open play this season. They've scored 5 goals all from set pieces, whether that be penalty kicks, corner, free kick, and they've given up 7. So 7 goals against in 7 games played isn't terrible. It's also not great. They haven't scored more goals than they've conceded, so that's a number that they want to improve. What have you seen out of them early on in this season, Peter? And what are you looking for them out of this game on Saturday?
Obviously, I think the conversation surrounding the lack of goals scored from open play, I don't know what it is now, like 294 days or something. But I mean, because of the off season.
Who's counting?
But yeah, who's counting? Yeah, I mean, obviously it's concerning, and particularly after the showing in Kansas City this past weekend, it's more concerning as how disheartening that loss was. But it's not to say the Whitecaps haven't been competitive. It's not to say that the Whitecaps haven't had their chances. It really is frustrating as both a fan and as someone trying to be an objective observer to see so many chances. Not saying that our chance creation has been great, but there have been chances, and it's frustrating to see them not capitalizing on them. It's weird that it seems to be only on set pieces where the Caps, the individual players in the moment are sharp, and then when the ball falls to them in open play and they got a great opportunity, they seem to keep missing. So I mean, it's tough to evaluate them in that sense because the opportunity is there, and I think the effort is certainly there, but the finishing and the mentality maybe not so much.
Yeah, it feels like very frustrating. I mean, on the plus side, they have scored a goal, scored 5 to be exact. At least they're not, shut out early on in the season. But let's take a quick delve into the Caps formation. MDS seems to be favoring a 4-4-2 this season. I don't know if that's the ideal one right now, given that they don't have a number 10, Peter. I think it's what they're doing the best with what they have. What do you see them playing this Saturday against the Houston team that we briefly chatted before, but very interesting? They're kind of fluid. They're a team that doesn't seem to score a whole ton of goals. They don't seem to be giving up a lot as well.
Just to touch on the 4-4-2 formation like I've been using, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because 4-4-2, when you think about it, is like you can think of a team like Burnley in the Premier League, where it's like it is the very classic kick and run, and you need players, especially the players in the front line, to be able to hold the line. Those players need to, when they get the opportunity, need to bring the ball down. They need to be able to pass very accurately when those opportunities come, because there simply aren't a lot of them when you play that way. In terms of where the Whitecaps are going to be with their formation this weekend, I think DeSantos, part of the reason he's been going with the 4-4-2 is out of availability. At different times we've had different midfielders injured, chiefly Baldissimo here and there. If Baldissimo, Kyle Alexander, and Jenny Obikel are all available this weekend, maybe they go to the 4-3-3, and maybe they use Caicedo and Dahomey on the wings to support Cava, especially considering Houston has been playing, with the exception of last weekend where they played somewhere we were debating whether it's called a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-5-2. Mm-hmm. But Houston's generally been playing a 4-3-3. So, maybe just, I think DeSantos there, maybe he sees if he trusts his squad to go up on the head-to-head matchups, you think they're going to fare better. Maybe he plays 4-3-3.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I definitely like about Houston, not from a team standpoint, but more of a formation and tactical side, is that you don't know what formation they're playing. And sometimes that plays in the hands of the opposition. Sometimes that plays in the hands of the team. And, I think we've seen it before with the Whitecaps where they play the same formation over and over again, sometimes with the same personnel, sometimes with a rotating cast of characters, and maybe don't find the success that they maybe should, given they're setting up the right way for the opposition. I think they're now set up, Peter, with a team that they can actually win games, as we touched on before. They can actually compete. So I think they go with a 4-4-2 this weekend. Again, not like they need to fix. They have any other options to bring in creatively to change the game. I think Baldissimo does bring a lot offensively from a defensive midfield standpoint. But yeah, let's see. I think it'll be a 4-4-2. Do you agree with me saying that, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to see them play a 4-3-3, but we also, Baldissimo, we're not sure if he's absolutely going to be fit. I think the 4-4-2, especially given how committed DeSantos has been to that, given the squad at the moment, I think a 4-4-2 is the most probable.
I think if we see a number 10, in one's dreams come into the squad, again, I know they're trying hard, and I'm taking nothing away from the lack of the trying aspect of it. But if we do see a number 10 at some point this season, I definitely do see a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2 with attacking mid and a defensive mid, almost like a diamond. But yeah, 4-3-3 would be ideal if a number 10 comes in. And how many players they have in midfield, like 6 or 7 that could start. Rose could even be for a starting midfielder if he wanted to, or if MDS wanted to. So lots of options there. I will pose the next question, Peter. Who do you think would be out? Who's in? I will follow that question with MDS this week said all players are available, but not match fit. So based on last weekend, looks like Owusu, Baldissimo could probably play quite a bit of the game. Gaspar is available. Just to preface that, who do you think might appear in this one for the Caps and start?
I think the primary questions, if we assume that they're going to play a 4-4-2, I think the primary question and where we might see movement is on the back line. Who is going to pair with Ranko Veselinovic? Is it going to be Andy Rose, who, as much as people might have said, no, Andy Rose isn't a center back. Andy Rose, he doesn't have a bunch of pedigree. He's unlike Eric Godoy, maybe played in Argentina, whatever. But Andy Rose he's been very effective, and you can feel his presence his lack of presence, correct me, when he's not on the field. Derek Cornelius, I remember when he came into the Minnesota game at halftime, I remember right at the start, it's like, oh, he's playing really well. But it was also partly, and you can debate if it was Gutierrez or Derek Cornelius who was responsible for that goal, but he did play a part in Minnesota scoring and Vancouver conceding. So, do you have an opinion there?
I totally agree with you. I think there's two sides of the coin. I think he brings a very physical presence. He's not as agile as Cornelius, and he's likes to pick the passes up the field. Cornelius likes to play quick little balls, left and right, diagonally. So there's two aspects to it. I definitely think if Godoy can play at least 60, 70, maybe even 90. I don't know what his fitness is like. He just made the bench last weekend, but I feel like Veselinovic and Godoy are your 1-2 punch, and then followed by Cornelius and Rose. And again, not to take anything away from Cornelius and Rose, I think they perform well. But given that Rose is also a threat off set pieces, as we saw against Toronto in the second or third game of the season, I think he fits in well. He's a veteran presence, and he really knows how to lead alongside Veselinovic, who is still a young player, getting his way and finding his way in MLS. And besides Rose, who's been pretty much everywhere in England and U.S. soccer.
Yeah, the other areas, we could have, if you look at the Colorado game, look at the Minnesota game, we're going to talk about Lucas Cavallini a second, but Russell Teibert, does Russell Teibert take the position on the left wing like he has in the past few games? And I have to say, watching the Kansas City game, I was thinking, maybe having Russell Teibert on the field right now isn't the worst thing. He's not the he's not the sexiest player, but he does calm things down when there are he's not giving the ball away. He's making the safe pass, and he's the build up play is taking a while, but his crossing has also been quite decent this season.
Yeah, I think we've seen in years past where he provides some scoring punch. He's got 3 career MLS goals. He's got some MLS assists. He and Rose bring a steady presence on the field for the Whitecaps, a veteran one certainly. But I think when they're chasing a game or where they're needing to score, I think it's definitely not the option they go with. A lot of people are screaming for Raposo or having Gula to start. Raposo was pulled off after 30 minutes on Sunday for Baldissimo. So not a good look for Raposo, who I think is a very good player, just maybe not the match for him to be in, given the options. Talked about not being able to stop goals or giving up some goals. Let's transition to scoring goals, Peter, and I mentioned it off the top. No goals from open play yet. We've played this we've played this music before in regards to not being able to score early on in the season, let alone open play. Let me ask you this: what do they need to do this weekend against Houston to get the ball in the net from open play?
Okay, well, I think, it's not an easy fix, right? Right off the bat, I think we are predicting here that Marc Dos Santos isn't going to shake up the lineup that much. So you're still going to have the same players in the field. It's still probably going to be Dahome and Lucas Cavallini up front. At the end of the day, those two players having those starting positions, they do need to be more clinical. The team, the Whitecaps have been running teams off the park this year in terms of miles logged. That doesn't necessarily mean it's translating into anything, but they are moving around a lot. They are helping each other out. There's a lot of movement. I think with that being said, the caveat of that strategy is that the Whitecaps do get very tired as the game progresses. Marc Dos Santos needs to start subbing in players earlier. He cannot wait until the 75th, 80th minute when the team is down 1-0 to start bringing in players. Like if we look at like Lucas Cavallini, for example, who's been the pinpoint of this discussion of where are the goals, we haven't seen Tosaint Ricketts this year. We have barely seen Theo Bair. We haven't seen David Egbo. We've got 4 strikers on the roster, and yet we seem only to be using 1. So I'm not, Lucas Cavallini is a great player. I still have a ton of faith in Lucas Cavallini, even if there is a discussion that he's struggling right now. But at the same time, maybe he needs some more help in terms of who's next to him, or maybe he needs to come off the game when he's not playing well and someone else needs to take their chance.
Yeah, and I think definitely, Peter, it stems from that number 10 conversation we had earlier. I think everyone's had it in any podcast, tweet, thread, whatever, 3 months, maybe even the last 2-3 years, right? To put in perspective, Christian Dahomey has the most shots in the Whitecaps this year. And yes, he's been things forward, he leads the team with 3 goals, but this is a guy that's supposed to be creating the opportunities, creating the chances, given, a couple from set pieces, 1 from the penalty spot. I just feel like that's not numbers you want. Yes, he's an exciting player, but Cavallini is your go-to guy that's supposed to be getting those balls in from Dahomey. It feels frustrating in this game. We'll get to Houston in a moment here, but one thing that I will watch for in this game is the physicality. Like the Whitecaps know how Tim Parker plays. Fully healthy going to this game. He played in the weekend against Colorado. So I expect a physical battle. I wouldn't mind seeing a Bear, a Ricketts come in or even start and then have Dahomey and Caicedo in the wings, which would be, I think, deathly for the opposition's left and right backs to have those 2 speedsters running at you and in behind and around you. So that's something to think about. And I think they need to find some success on the wings into this game, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, this week's over-under game. All right, Peter, I'll let you go first. Since I'm hosting this one, I feel like it's only kind for me to let you go first, not second worst or whatever they call it. But I'll let you ask the questions and I'll provide the answers to my best abilities without looking at any stats or anything like that. Go ahead.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Gideon?
Nothing but the lie. I mean, the truth. Yes, of course.
Yes.
Far away.
All right. Well, Marco Maric, who was their goalkeeper they acquired last year and remains their goalkeeper this year. He played in 23 games last year. To give you some perspective, what was his goals against average, higher or lower than 1.8 per game?
I'm going to say higher. I think Houston definitely leaked in the goals last year.
I'm afraid it was lower, 1.74.
Oh,
but
damn.
I kept it close to the needle there, so maybe that was.
Yes, you did. I appreciate that.
All right, yeah, fire away.
Okay, so
Albert
Ellis had 5 goals last year, over under.
I'm trying to remember how many games Albert Ellis played last year, because I can't remember if he left in the summer or the winter transfer window. I'm still gonna say over on that.
2.
Wow, that is, I'm hoping he left in the summer. I don't know if that's a poor season for Elise.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, Darwin Quintero, who I'm sure we're going to talk about in a moment. Darwin Quintero, he played 22 games last year. Did he get over or under 11 assists?
Ooh, I'm going to say under. I feel like he was very hot and cold last season.
Correct, it was under. He had 10 assists last year.
He's no Sebastian Giovinco, but he's a good little player. Okay, next one. Albert Ellis had 3 yellows last year. Over under.
Under.
He had 6 yellow cards last year.
6 yellow cards.
As a winger.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
A winger. All right. Not doing so hot so far. Okay. All right. Memo Rodriguez, who will probably feature this this weekend. Yep. He played 21 games last year for Houston. Did he score over or under 6 goals?
I think it was, I'm going to say over on this one.
It was under. He scored 5, but that does give me an opportunity to
to win the damn game.
No, to tie it. To tie it.
To tie. That's right. It's 1-0.
Yeah, it's 1-0.
Game goes by so fast. All right. Tyler Derrick, the Houston goalie as of last year, played 15 games over under.
Based on marriage, under.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Unless there was a lot of subbing mid-game, which I mean,
that would be over.
Who knows with MLS, but.
All right, that was this week's over under. All right, let's since we talked about them so in depth in that game, Peter, let's transition to Houston Dynamo, who, given the rebranding in the off season, they've gone through a lot of change. They have Tab Ramos, the former US U23 man in charge, has been for a couple of seasons now. What do you see them playing this weekend? As you mentioned earlier, they kind of played a 3-4-1-2 last weekend. Do you see them playing a 4-4-3? Do you see them playing a 3-4-1-2? What do you expect them to play in this game?
I suppose that the decision. I mean, I didn't get to watch the Houston's game this past weekend. I don't know if maybe that was injury related, maybe that was form related, because Houston have a pretty similar form to us right now. I think they've got one more draw, whereas we have one more loss, but otherwise it's an identical record. I would expect Houston to play more of a 4-3-3, just particularly because of how many forwards the Whitecaps have. I mean, maybe they can clog up the midfield with playing with 3 at the back and 3 in the center, or 5 in the center in terms of attackers and midfielders. But yeah, I would expect that Houston will play more of a 4-3-3 because that's what they've been playing for every single game this season outside of the recent loss to Colorado this past Saturday.
Yeah, so just forgot to mention that as well. So Houston lost 3-1. It was 2-0. Christian Ramirez, who seems like a great pickup, a frugal one at that, from LAFC, scored to make it 2-1. Then it was a 3-1 final. They are 2-2-2 on the season, 7 goals for, 8 against their 6 in the West, 2 standings ahead or more than the Whitecaps. One question I will phrase for you, Peter: who do you want to watch out for in this game? If are you looking to see get on the ball? For me, I'll just say it first, is probably Darwin Quintero. I think he's the cream of the crop when it comes to playmakers. He was actually a Whitecaps target 3 years ago before he signed with Minnesota. But you're welcome to say the same thing if you want, or you can pick a player that you think. But honestly, besides him, there's not a whole lot of excitement going on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. Houston certainly does not have they don't have the namesake players that the MLS pundits and the media look out for. Yeah, with that said, I mean, yeah, Quintero, it's interesting. I hope, well, I suppose I don't hope he makes an appearance because he hasn't been playing for Houston that much despite being on the bench. But I mean, this is a little bit biased, but I'd love to see Tyler Pasher this weekend. I mean, I never got to see really anything of him at Kansas or in their second team, Swope Park Rangers. But he had a phenomenal season under former Whitecaps gaffer Martin Rennie last season at Indy 11, and yeah, I think he was purchased for like $50,000 or something, some chump change by Houston. But he's been, at least in those first 2 games, I remember watching him, and he was quite impressive, very accurate in terms of, or he was a very fast, very agile player. He was playing well in that kind of center forward, or left wing, but then kind of dips inside center forward role. And I remember him assisting one goal from the kind of cut past the defender into the back of the 18 and then cut it back for a goal there. So I'd love to see Tyler Pasher. I mean, that's just the fact that he's Canadian, but he has also been an exciting player for Houston this season.
Yeah, it's really nice to see a Canadian player flourish early on anyways. I believe he got his first MLS goal a couple weeks ago, got an assist earlier on. So it's nice to see a guy, I think you can totally agree with this, Peter, that, is finding success on a American MLS team. There hasn't been a lot of that, but it's certainly nice to see you can add Tejan Buchanan into that conversation as well. So that's the story for another day. This is a Houston team that has had somewhat of a simple schedule besides Portland LAFC. They beat San Jose 2-1. They lost to Portland 2-1. They drew LAFC and Dallas 1-1. And last week, they beat Kansas City 1-0. And that's a result that sticks out to me, given the Whitecaps just losing 3-0 to Kansas City. I think SKC, we know, is a very good team. I just think they show up for certain games and they don't. It seems to always be against the Whitecaps in Kansas City. Anyways, but I feel like Houston can win on a lot of nights, Peter, against certain teams. They can compete. I just feel like they need to have more consistency when it comes to the younger players, like guys like Memo Rodriguez, Christian Ramirez. They need to rely on those attacking players who are fresh blood in the team. Rodriguez has been around for a while, but he's a younger player. He's got lots of legs. compared to guys like Figueroa and Boniek Garcia who have been around for seemingly years in the league. So I think along with you, we agree that, you know, they're young, they're talented. I think they're missing a couple pieces in the squad. They only have one DP, which is Quintero, and I think you brought up a good point about him being a TAM player. So they're not, you know, the most exciting team to watch in MLS. I did see their opening night's game against San Jose, an absolute scorcher to start the year, and a downpour in Houston. Is there anything that you're watching out for in this game, Peter, that Houston could maybe take advantage of the Whitecaps?
Houston's a hard team to evaluate because, I mean, you put it well there, Gideon. They don't have, you know, a sparkly roster, but at the same time, there's a mix. It's a very MLS team, and there's a mix of guys who've been around this league. And you said Figueroa, Boniek Garcia, Darwin Sarin, you know, a lot of guys who've been around this league. I mean, even Tim Parker now, a lot of guys who've been around this league for a long time, but you also have a combination of a lot of, you know, really young American players who, you know, for us pundits who are up in Canada, unless you watch MLS every single team, like, you know, you're not going to necessarily know who some of these guys are. So they suffer a problem like the Whitecaps in that they can be very inconsistent. But at the same time, one of the things that they do have that the Whitecaps don't is they have MLS veterans in the team. So I think it'll be, you know, Houston at their best are a team that, because of that leadership, they can be well organized and on the field, and then they've also got young guys who bring a lot of pace, who bring a lot of agility, and, you know, a lot of desire to win. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. Houston will have fans in the stadium probably because of, you know, how well vaccinated the United States is and really lackadaisical restrictions in the South. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'd love to see Mark Dos Santos I know he's not going to be that, probably make too many changes with the lineup, but I'd love to see him be a bit more flexible mid-game depending on the situation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors to play into this game. I think as we know, the first 50 minutes can win or lose a game for the Whitecaps. We saw that against Colorado. They really were all over the Rapids, and they ended up losing that game 1-0 to, you know, take nothing away from a beautiful Diego Rubio free kick. They came out hard against Montreal. They won the game. So I feel like if they have a key first 15, 20 minutes, Peter, I think they can win this game. One thing I will note from last weekend for Houston, that they maybe led to the loss. They played a depleted team. They gave debuts to Mateo Baimich, Jose Bazama, Alejandro Fuenmayor, and Nicola Lemoyne. One will draw a comparison to Houston in my mind is very similar to Real Salt Lake, who I think is another maybe playoff team. They have a young striker in Rubin. Houston has Ramirez. They have a good number 10 in Quintero and Albert Rusnak. They have solid defensive midfielders, and they have MLS veteran Justin Glad. Houston has Tim Parker, and the Whitecaps have had success against RSL. Not saying it's the same team, but just to draw a comparison to people who may not be familiar with either of these teams to see what Houston can play like in this match. Any final thoughts in the Dynamo, Peter, before we wrap it up?
I know that Mark Dos Santos will not take, you know, these two recent losses lightly. I know the team won't either. There's a lot of good spirit in that locker room. I just think that I hope and I'll be watching to see how this Whitecaps team does you know, you talked about those first 50 minutes. Let's talk about those last 40 minutes. I hope the Whitecaps, you know, it's all well and good to say, you know, you want to win the game, the effort's there, to have that superior mentality, but there also needs to be, you know, the method and on top of the madness, right? The Whitecaps, in terms of both their formation and the players they have on the field, they need to be flexible to wherever they are at that 50th minute. You know, if they're, regardless of whether they're winning or losing, I think we need to see a bit more flexibility from the Whitecaps in changing the game plan depending on what's going on.
Fluidity is a word that will be used a lot in this game. I think Houston's very fluid in how the way they change their formation. I think the Whitecaps off the bench can be incredibly fluid. They have Ricketts, they have Habibullah, they could have Raposo, they could have Dahome or Caicedo come off the bench depending on if they play a game 3 games in a week or what have you. So I think it'll come down to formations and then substitutions, Peter, as you mentioned just a few times that we talked about. The Whitecaps are probably one of the deepest teams, I think, in the Western Conference. They have a player probably at every position that could start. You know, they could essentially 2 squads, as I've talked about before in the preview. So they're a fun team to when they're on their game. We have yet to see that this season. We saw it sometimes last year. Mentioned in the bubble, I guess you could say MLS is back. They had a couple of exciting games against San Jose and Chicago. So that's really what comes to mind. one final thought from me before we go. It was nice to see last weekend, Peter, when Montreal and Atlanta played. 44,000 fans, I think it was. Did that not bring up some good times for you?
Absolutely. You can get all political about having people in stadiums or whatever, but I mean, it is, you cannot deny that it reminds you of, what we love about watching the beautiful game, and especially watching the beautiful game here in North America.
Yeah, I was watching it for, I think, about 40 minutes or so, and I just got chills every time there was a cheer. So about, a year and a half ago, I was at MLS Cup in Seattle, and it just seems like that was 3-4 years ago, given the current state of the world. But hope everyone's staying safe, getting vaccinated. Final thought on the game, it's at 6 p.m. on Saturday. That's Vancouver time on TSN 1 and 4. Peter, before we let you go, where can you be found on Twitter?
Everyone can hurl abuse at me at Peter Hicken on
Awesome.
Twitter.
All right. Thank you, Peter. You can find me as well at _ Gideon Hill. It was nice chatting with you, Peter. I'm glad you're still here, and part of the preview is myself. We keep the band together and welcome the newest member, as well as the DZ family. Congrats to Joe and Caroline. Hopefully we'll have him back next week, but I'm sure he'll be babysitting. So we might have to do this again, hear each other's voice. But anyways, congrats to them and enjoy the game.
When you're listening on some far-flung corner of the globe to the World Service of a Saturday afternoon, crackly reception, interference, cosy, marvellous. Somehow comforting, isn't it? Legendary names, fathers and sons on the terraces, cheesy peas at half-time, pint for dad, mum's at home making the tea. Oh, everything's all right with the world, isn't it? Saturday afternoon is football.
10 minutes left. Yeah.